Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Conversations with God book group, which meets every Sunday. And this is Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. I'm Nanette Kennedy, and I work with Humanities Team and Evo Revo, which are all part of Humanities Team. And we are on book 3, chapter 6, and I'll let Linda take it from there so she can get everybody at the right place.
Okay, so there's a little exchange that goes on, and Neale says, "Give me 5," and then the next question is, so what I want to know is, what is psychic power? You all have what you call psychic power. It is truly a sixth sense, and you all have a sixth sense about things. Psychic power is simply the ability to step out of your limited experience into a broader view, to step back, to feel more than what the limited individual you have imagined yourself to be would feel, to know more than he or she would know. It is the ability to tap into the larger truth all around you, to sense a different energy. Well, how does one develop this ability? Develop is a good word. It's sort of like muscles. You all have them, and yet some of you choose to develop them, whereas in others they remain undeveloped and far less useful. To develop your psychic muscle, you must exercise it, use it every day, all the time. Right now, the muscle is there, but it's small, it's weak, it's underused. So you'll get an intuitive hit now and then, but you won't act on it. You'll get a hunch about something, but you'll ignore it. You'll have a dream or an inspiration, but you'll let it pass, paying it scant attention. Thank goodness you did pay attention to the hit you had about this book, or you wouldn't be reading these words now. You think you came to these words by accident, by chance? So the first step in developing psychic power is to know that you have it and use it. Pay attention to every hunch you have, every feeling you feel, every intuitive hit you experience. Pay attention. Then act on what you know. Don't let your mind talk you out of it. Don't let your fear pull you away from it. The more you act on your intuition fearlessly, the more your intuition will serve you. It's always there, only now you're paying attention to it. Yeah, but I'm not talking about the always finding a parking space kind of psychic ability. I'm talking about real psychic power, the kind that sees into the future, the kind that lets you know things about people you'd have no way of knowing otherwise. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about too. Well, how does this psychic power work? Should I listen to people who have it? If a psychic makes a prediction, can I change it, or is my future set in stone? How can some psychics tell about things about you the minute you walk in the room? What if, okay, wait a minute. Let's slow down a bit and try one question at a time. That's 4 questions there. Okay, how does psychic power work? All right, there are 3 rules of psychic phenomenon that will allow you to understand how psychic power works. Let's go over them. 1, all thought is energy. 2, all things are in motion. 3, all time is now. Psychics are people who have opened themselves to the experiences these phenomenon produce. Vibrations. Sometimes formed as pictures in the mind, sometimes a thought in the form of a word. The psychic becomes adept at feeling these energies. This may not be easy at first because these energies are very light, very fleeting, very subtle, like the slightest breeze on a summer night that you think you felt rustle your hair, but maybe didn't. Like the faintest sound in the furthest distance that you would think you heard, but can't be sure. Like the dimmest flicker of an image at the corner of your eye that you swore was there, but then when you looked head on, it was gone, vanished. Was it there at all? That's the question the beginning psychic is always asking. The accomplished psychic never asks, because to ask the question sends the answer away. Asking the question engages the mind, and that's the last thing a psychic wants to do. Intuition does not reside in the mind. To be psychic, you've got to be out of your mind, because intuition resides in the psyche, in the soul. Intuition is the ear of the soul. The soul is the only instrument sensitive enough to pick up life's vibrations, to feel these energies, to sense these waves in the field, and to interpret them. You have 6 senses, not 5. They're your sense of smell, taste, touch, sight, hearing, and knowing. Every time you have a thought, it sends off an energy. It is energy. The soul of the psychic picks up that energy. The true psychic will not stop to interpret it, but will probably just blurt out what the energy feels like. That's how a psychic can tell you what you're thinking. Every feeling you've ever had resides in your soul. Your soul is the sum total of all your feelings. It is the repository. Even though it may have been years since you've stored them there, a psychic who is truly open can feel these feelings here and now, because altogether now, there's no such thing as time. That's how a psychic can tell you about your past. Tomorrow also does not exist. All things are occurring right now. Every occurrence sends off a wave of energy, prints an indelible picture on the cosmic photographic plate. The psychic sees or feels the picture of tomorrow as if it is happening right now, which it is. That is how some psychics tell the future. How is this done physiologically? Perhaps without actually knowing what he's doing, a psychic, through the act of intense focusing, is sending out an actual submolecular component of himself. His thought, if you will, leaves the body, zings out into space, and goes far enough, fast enough, to be able to turn around and see from a distance the now that you have not yet experienced. Submolecular time travel. You could say that. Submolecular time travel. Okay, we've decided to turn this into a vaudeville show. No, I'll be good, I promise, really. Go on, I really do want to hear this. Okay. The submolecular part of the psychic, having absorbed the energy of the image gained from focusing, zings back to the psychic's body, bringing the energy with it. The psychic gets a picture, sometimes with a shiver or feels a feeling, and tries very hard not to do any processing of the data, but simply and instantly describes it. The psychic has learned not to question what he's thinking, or suddenly seeing, or feeling, but merely to allow it to come through as untouched as possible. Weeks later, if the event pictured or felt actually occurs, the psychic is called a clairvoyant, which of course is true. If that's the case, how come some predictions are wrong, or that is, they never happen? Because the psychic has not predicted the future, merely offered a glimpse of one of the possible possibilities observed in the internal moment of now. It's always the subject of the psychic reading who has made the choice. He could just as easily make another choice, a choice not in concert with the prediction. The eternal moment contains all possible possibilities. As I've explained now several times, everything has already happened in a million different ways. All that's left for you to do is to make some perception choices. It's all a question of perception. When you change your perception, you change your thought, and your thought creates your reality. Whatever outcome you could anticipate in any situation is already there for you. All you have to do is to perceive it, know it. This is what's meant by, quote, even before you ask, I have answered. In truth, your prayers are answered before the prayer is offered. Then how come we don't all get what we pray for? This is covered in book 1. You don't always get what you ask, but you always get what you create. Creation follows thought, which follows perception. This is mind-boggling. Even though we've been over this before, this is still mind-boggling. Isn't it, though? That's why it's good to keep going over it. Hearing it several times gives you a chance to wrap your mind around it. It gets your mind unboggled. If everything's all happening now, what dictates which part of it all I'm experiencing in my moment of now? Your choices and your beliefs in your choices. That belief will be created by your thoughts on a particular subject, and those thoughts arise out of your perceptions. That is the way you look at it. So the psychic sees the choice you are now making about tomorrow and sees that played out. But a true psychic will always tell you it doesn't have to be that way. You can choose again and change the outcome. In effect, I'd be changing the experience I've already had. Exactly. Now you're getting it. Now you're understanding how to live in the paradox. But if it's already happened, to whom has it happened? And if I change it, who is the me that experiences the change? There is more than one of you moving down the timeline. This was all described in book 2 in detail. I'm going to suggest that you reread that, then combine what's there with what's here for a richer understanding. Okay, fair enough. But I'd like to talk about this psychic stuff a little longer. A lot of people claim to be psychic. How can I tell the real from the fake? Everyone is psychic, so they're all real. What you want to look for is their purpose. Are they seeking to help you or to enrich themselves? Psychics, so-called professional psychics, who are seeking to enrich themselves, often promise to do things for their psychic power, with their psychic power. Return a lost lover, bring wealth and fame, even help you lose weight. They promise they can do all of this, but only for a fee. They'll even do a reading on another, your boss, your lover, a friend, and tell you all about them. They'll say, bring me something, a scarf, a picture, a sample of their writing, handwriting. And they can tell you about the other, often quite a bit. Everyone leaves a trace, a psychic fingerprint, an energy trail. And a true sensitive can feel this. But a sincere intuitive will never offer to cause another to come back to you, get a person to change their mind, or create any result whatsoever with their psychic power. A true psychic, one who has given her life to the development and use of this gift, knows that another's free will is never to be tampered with, and that another's thoughts are never to be invaded, and that another's psychic space is to never be violated. Well, I thought you said there was no right and wrong. What is it with all these nevers all of a sudden? Every time I lay down an always or a never, it is within the context of what I know you are seeking to accomplish, what it is you're trying to do. I know you are all seeking to evolve, to grow spiritually, to return to the oneness. You are seeking to experience yourself as the grandest version of the greatest vision you ever had about who you are. You are seeking this individually and as a race. Now, there are no rights or wrongs, no do's and don'ts in my world, as I have said many times. And you do not burn in everlasting fires of hell if you make a bad choice, because neither bad nor hell exists, unless, of course, you think it does. Still, there are natural laws that have been built into the physical universe. And one of those natural laws is the laws of cause and effect. One of the most important laws of cause and effect is this: all caused effect is ultimately experienced by the self. What does that mean? Whatever you cause another to experience, you will one day experience. Members of your New Age community have a more colorful way of putting it. What goes around comes around. Right. Others know this as the Jesus injunction: do unto others as you would have it done unto you. Jesus was teaching the law of cause and effect. It is what might be called the prime law, something like the prime directive given to Kirk Picard and Janeway. Oh my gosh, God is a Trekkie. Are you kidding? I wrote half the episodes. Well, better not let Gene hear you say that. Come on, Gene told me to say that. You're in touch with Gene Roddenberry? And Carl Sagan and Bob Heinlein. The whole gang is here. You know, we shouldn't kid around from this. It takes away from the believability of the whole dialogue. Oh, I see. A conversation with God has to be serious. Well, at least believable. It's not believable that I've got Gene, Carl, and Bob right here. I'll have to tell them that. Well, back to how you can tell a true psychic from a fake one. A true psychic knows and lives the prime directive. That's why if you ask her to bring back a long-lost love or read the aura of another person whose handkerchief or letter you have, a true psychic will tell you, I'm sorry, but I don't do that. I never interfere, intervene in, look in on the path walked by another. I will not attempt to affect, direct, or impact their choices in any way. And I will not divulge to you information about any individual that is personal or private. If a person offers to perform one of these services for you, that person is what you would call a shyster, using your own human weakness and vulnerabilities to extract money from you. Okay, well, what about the psychics who help people locate a missing loved one, a child who was abducted, a teenager who ran away and has too much pride to call home even though they desperately want to? Or what about the classic case of locating a person, dead or alive, for the police? Of course, these questions all answer themselves. What the true psychic always avoids is imposing his will upon another. She is there only to serve. Is it okay to ask a psychic to contact the dead? Should we attempt to reach out to those who have gone before? Why would you want to? Or to see if they have something they want to say, to tell us? If someone from the other side has something they want you to know, they'll find a way to cause you to know it. Don't worry. The aunt, the uncle, the brother, the sister, the father, the mother, the spouse, and the lover who have gone before are continuing their own journey, experiencing complete joy, moving toward total understanding. If part of what they want to do is to come back to you, to see how you are doing, to bring you an awareness that they're all right, whatever, trust that they'll do that. Then watch for the sign and catch it. Don't dismiss it as just your imagination or wishful thinking or coincidence. Watch for the message and receive it. I know a lady who was nursing her dying husband, and she begged him, if you have to go, please come back to her and to let her know that he was all right. And he promised he would, and he died 2 days later, and not a week went by when that lady was awakened one night by the feeling that someone had just sat down on the bed next to her. When she opened her eyes, she could have sworn she saw her husband sitting at the foot of the bed, smiling at her. But when she blinked and looked again, he was gone. She told me the story later, saying then that she must have just been hallucinating. Yes, that's very common. You were seeing signs in futile, obvious ways, and you ignore them or dismiss them as your own mind playing tricks on you. You have the same choice with this book now. Why would we do that? Why do we ask for something like wisdom contained in these 3 books and then refuse to believe it when we receive it? Because you doubt the greater glory of God. Like Thomas, you have to see, feel, touch before you will believe. Yet that which you wish to know cannot be seen, felt, or touched. It is of another realm. And you are not open to that. You are not ready. Yet do not fret. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So are you saying then, to get back to the original line of questioning, that we should not go to a psychic or a seance seeking contact on the other side? I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do anything. I'm just not sure what the point would be. Well, supposing you had something you wanted to say to the other rather than something you wanted to hear from them. Do you imagine that you could say it and they would not hear it? The slightest thought having to do with a being existing on what you call the other side brings that being's consciousness flying to you. You cannot have a thought or an idea about a person who is what you call deceased without that person's essence being completely aware of it. It's not necessary to use a medium to produce such communication. Love is the best medium of communication. But how about two-way communication? What would a medium be helpful there? Or is such communication even possible? Is it all hogwash? Is it dangerous? You are talking now about communication with spirits. Yes, such communication is possible. Is it dangerous? Virtually everything is dangerous if you're afraid. What you fear, you create. Yet there is really nothing to be afraid of. Loved ones are never far from you, never more than a thought away, and will always be there if you need them, ready with counsel or comfort or advice. If there is a high level of stress on your part about a loved one being okay, they will send you a sign, a signal, a little message that will allow you to know everything is fine. You won't even have to call on them, because souls who loved you in this life are drawn to you, pull to you, fly to you the moment they sense the slightest trouble or disturbance in your auric field. One of their first opportunities as they learn about possibilities of their own existence is to provide aid and comfort to those they love. And you will feel their comforting presence if you are ready to open to them, if you are really open to them. So the stories we hear of people who could have sworn that a deceased loved one was in the room could be true, most assuredly. One might smell the loved one's perfume or cologne, or get a whiff of the cigar they smoked, or faintly hear a song they used to hum. Or out of nowhere, some personal possession of theirs may suddenly appear. A handkerchief, a wallet, or some cufflink of jewelry just shows up for no reason. It's found in a chair cushion or under a stack of magazines. There it is, a picture, a photograph of a special moment, just when you were missing that person and thinking about them and feeling sad about their death. These things don't just happen. These kinds of things don't just appear at just the right moment by chance. I tell you this, there are no coincidences in the universe. This is very, very common. Now go back to your question. Do you need a so-called medium or channel to communicate with beings out of the body? No. Is it sometimes helpful? Sometimes. So much depends again on the psychic or the medium and their motivation. If someone refuses to work this way with you, or to do any kind of channeling or go-between work without high compensation, run. Don't walk the other way. That person may be in it only for the money. Don't be surprised if you get hooked into returning time and time again for weeks or months or even years as they play on your need or desire to contact the spirit world. A person who is only there as the spirit is there to help asks nothing for himself except what is needed to continue to do the work they seek to do. If a psychic or a medium is coming from that place when she agrees to help you, make sure you offer all the help in return that you can. Don't take advantage of such extraordinary generosity of the spirit by giving little or not at all when you know that you could do more. Look to see who is truly serving the world, truly seeking to share wisdom and knowledge, insight and understanding, caring and compassion. Provide for those people and provide grandly. Pay them the highest honor. Give them the largest amount. For these are the bringers of the light.
Thank you, Linda. Beautifully read as usual.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. Your reading was amazing. In the past 5 minutes, I've been more mesmerized by your voice and the way you intone the words than by the actual content, even though I obviously paid attention to the content.
Thank you. My honor.
Well, I think there's many places we could go here. One of which I was reminded, I was at a Celebrate Your Life conference in Phoenix. This is probably over 10 years ago. And I can't remember who it was, but it was a psychic, well-known psychic. But at any rate, part of this class, if you will, is James Van Praagh. I knew that was going to get me all hooked up here. He just talked about his own life, his own experiences, and, things that happened to him. And he says very much a lot of what Neil is saying, or God is saying here, because it's like, it's for people like James Van Praagh, who does this all the time. And many people ask him, how do you turn that off? Because you don't want to be like a radio signal tower 24/7. And he said, you turn the signal off. You turn the radio off. And he said it doesn't mean that from time to time he'll get a psychic hit when his radio isn't on. But at the end of this hour-long lecture, like the last 15 minutes, we had to, if we were sitting next to somebody we knew, we had to go sit next to somebody we didn't know. And then you either gave them your car keys or the pen that you've been holding or whatever. And I've considered myself intuitive, but like I don't think I'd feel comfortable sitting down with anybody saying, well, because I'm just not that confident in it. But anyway, so I took this gentleman's car keys, and James Van Praagh said, okay, without any kind of thought, I just get 3 or 4 pictures that come into your brain when you're holding those people's keys. And I remember it clearly as it happened yesterday. I saw an airplane, I saw children, and I saw an Albertsons grocery store. So and you write these things down, and then you hand the piece of paper to the person, and this guy goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow to go to Vietnam to work with children who are," I can't remember what the issue was, but to work with children. And he said, right before this session started, I ran into Albertsons to get an orange juice or something. But I think I was more shocked than he was, because I just did the 3 pictures. I'm sure we've all had some sort of experiences like that. Over.
That's a great story, Nanette.
Thank you. Well, how many of us have had the phone ring before caller ID?
Many times.
Yep. It's like, God, I was just thinking about you.
Yeah. And I've had, Scott said, well, how did you do that? But something's coming on the news, and then I say who it's going to be before their face flashes up, and Scott says, how do you know that? And I don't know. It just comes through, right? It just happens. So we're all more intuitive than the innocence was programmed to believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
My experience has been that I get all kinds of stuff, and I don't turn it on or turn it off. I just pretty much stay open. But it depends on where I am. Like there's some places that I go where I actually have to shut it down.
Yep.
If I go to City Hall, I don't know what the energy is in City Hall, but I have to shut it down when I walk into City Hall. Otherwise, it just makes me crazy. But I'll get stuff like, I'll have dreams. I dreamt there was a car in front of us, and all of a sudden it flipped on its lid. And I woke up and I'm like, okay. And it so happened we went somewhere that next day, and coming back, we saw that accident happen. And to this day, I don't know why. I still don't know why I got that, because the accident didn't impact us. No one was hurt. I mean, we stopped and assisted, but they really, at that point, there wasn't, everybody was fine. They all got out, and they just had a car on its lid, and then you just got to call and get somebody to come deal with the car. So it was like, and that's been my frustration with the gift is I get too much. I get stuff that I don't need. Obviously, there wasn't anything I could do about that. It didn't impact us. To this day, I still don't know why I was given that information.
I think it's sometimes, even when it doesn't seem like there's purpose, the purpose might be just the fact that it's letting you know you are open to energy and messages that you may not have any. There's nothing to do with it except for to tell you that you do have the ability to pick up. But like you, if I go into a hospital or I go into any really very crowded place, I need to bless my heart. And every time I don't, I go in and I just all of a sudden I'm overwhelmed with random stuff that there's nothing it's sort of like your car flipping over. So I do need to be careful, but I know that feeling.
I just had an epiphany. Perhaps that car flip was so I would have the story to share.
Mm-hmm.
but also possibly so that you could put your love into the situation. You don't know what the situation is when you have it before it actually happens. You can put a prayer, whatever you want to call it, into that situation when it comes in your head.
I like that. That's really good. Because that very well can be it, is it's like you're just getting a spiritual hit to keep somebody who's in a car, keep them healthy, is harm-free, whatever. And it does, because it does direct energy. And I was raised in the Catholic Church, and every time we heard a siren, from the time I was very young, we used to make the sign of the cross. And I would, the nuns and my parents would just say, that just means you're saying a really fast prayer for whoever's in trouble right now. So.
The statement I really like in this passage that really jumped out at me is, love is the best medium of communication. And God is always doing these word plays, but I just love that statement, and I feel I'm going to think about it for a long time. Love is the best medium.
Yep.
Related to this, have any of you heard of the notion of the spectrum of love? It's something that Alan Watts just was talking about once. I'm sure most of you have heard of Alan Watts. Mm-hmm. So he was saying how love is not like the specific emotion that you feel towards one person, or it's not something that just happens to you. Love is something that you actively do and something that you are within. And the spectrum of love refers to this whole, I think Neil Donald Walsh was also saying in his first book that I just finished last week, how basically the language of nature and the language of God is love. God talks to us through love. That's why when we are in love with someone, or when we look at a dog we love, or an animal we love, or just we are overwhelmed by this positive feeling of fulfilling love, we feel like our hearts are just full and fulfilled, and there is nothing more to seek and nothing more to ask for. And there's just this idea that maybe existence is made up of the spectrum of love manifested in so many different emotions, but we don't know how to perceive them as they are, because so often, I find myself at least so often entangled in my mind and my mental rants and my worries about what am I going to do about my dissertation at uni, and how am I going to talk to my friend about the argument that we had. We all get stuck in this stuff so often, and we forget to tune in to this spectrum of love, which is really just one thing, love in its different manifestations in the human psyche. And I think I just needed to give this little rant over.
Thank you.
That is not a rant. That is beautiful, beautiful, Stefania. And maybe just to add to that, some of the people in the book club know that I've had like this death experience, and for I don't know, it seemed like an eternity, but before that, I kept calling out to God and like to Jesus, and that's like the only real like deity that I really knew of. And I was getting like no answer. And when I finally like just surrendered to like the moment of like, this is it, this is when I'm gonna die, like I had this thought of my mother. And when I was thinking of her, like this feeling of like intense, unconditional, like eternal love like washed over me. And it was like at that moment, the gates of heaven opened. And it, to me, it was like, God doesn't answer to like labels. God answers to like love. And I felt like from that point on, I was like in the presence and in the like place that I had been like trying to escape from of like this death. And it was just like not coming from like calling on God or calling on Jesus. It was like when I was just like stopped and I thought of my mom and like dying and being her daughter and stuff. And anyways, that's what like opened up the gates of heaven. And it wasn't a God, it was love.
Yep.
It's beautiful, Brenna.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the only frequency. Love is the only frequency. It's what created everything, because everything that we see in this third dimensional realm is a physical manifestation of divine will. And that divine will is a physical is an offshoot of love, basically. So ultimately, we are all love beings. And when we get into our hearts and operate from our hearts, then we're in that place of love. When we get into our heads, we're separated from that energy. It's really a frequency, you know. He's always coming back to it's all energy, and that energy is a frequency. And if you and there are measurements to that frequency. And so to get into your heart, you have to be vibrating at 528 or above. That's love frequency. And so when we find our way there, it all sorts itself out.
I love the way you said it. I mean, when we find our way there, everything just vanishes and we are left with the now and the essence of what we are and what the other person is, or what the entire nature around us is. Love like tramples over everything and is the only thing there ever is. But sometimes we do find it hard to tune into that. But I guess that's the purpose of it all. The ultimate purpose, if you can talk in terms of a journey, or like, is to just reach that state of love. To get to the state where every day of your life you can just stop for a minute or for an hour or maybe every 5 minutes to just stop and open your eyes and see, oh, this is it. I'm here in the now, and the best I can do is love, so why not do that? I guess that's the ultimate purpose of everything, to find that in everything that we do.
Exactly. You know, the innocence was programmed to believe in time and got stuck in time, right? And that's what's happened here. We got stuck in vibrational density created by fear. That's what I believe anyway. And so when you constantly, I like to use my breath to bring me into the moment that is. And I practice, you know, I do this thing, let all the past be purified so only love remains and all false thinking disappears. May we now see only the love within ourselves and within all others. And may the innocence and the light that first drew us together now be primary and all else fade. Dear God, I place my relationships in the hands of the divine, and I do so with gratitude. And I say that several times a day so that I can clear my system of the past.
You know, another thing that I've started doing in the past week, whenever I go to bed, I set an intention to my subconscious, because there's this quote by Nikola Tesla, who was talking about vibration and frequency all the time. And I think you might find it at least interesting to do it starting tonight. Whenever you go to bed, just set an intention to your subconscious for the following day. But it has to be a real intention. It shouldn't be false or rooted in fear. It should come from the core of your being, because otherwise it's not what you create. I mean, this comes back to book one of the series, because book one is what I've read so far. But it's just having an honest intention about what you want to create the next day, and then the next day see, has that manifested? Should I just keep doing this? Maybe it will manifest someday. Maybe I will find out my pure intention. And I think that's something interesting to try.
Yeah, it's like Peggy Black says too, and Patty Robles and Neil, like we're really all chemical beings, and we can do anything once we let go of all the programs that, you know, and all the conditions. We're amazing. That's who we are. We're amazing.
I love that you brought up breath, and I'm going to put in the chat box this link to a TED Talk. That's his website, but on there's a TED Talk that he does, and he basically says we're being breathed. And I've been doing a lot of studying, and I just finished the first draft of a chapter on breathing that I'm writing. And basically, I've come to the belief that our spirit, our soul, resides in our breath. And when we think about it, like you think about how we're wired as a species, we have three things that we're wired for when we're afraid. We either run, we fight, or we freeze. But what we do the first thing that happens when we're afraid, regardless of what our other response is, the first thing we do is we hold our breath. And in that moment, it's my belief, we've all heard this saying, you scared me to death. It's in that moment of fright, our soul is deciding whether it's going to stay embodied or whether it's going to leave. And so I really believe that our spirit and soul reside in our breath. And when we take our final breath and our physical form leaves, we're in the wind. That's where our spirit is. We're in the wind.
It's beautiful, Linda. And I agree that, and I think it's in Home with God, the last Conversations with God book. And I could be wrong because I've read so many different books on this. But even in the hair split second of a car accident, you can choose to stay or go. And, because they'll say, and we've all known people or heard of people or heard stories where they said, it is nothing short of a miracle that that person survived that accident. And then there's other accidents that aren't that severe where somebody was killed. I always thought about that when I was reading The Home with God, because the premise of that book is nobody goes before you say, God, I'm ready. It's a really good book. And I'm sure, since we're reading all these books in order, and we're only on book 3, but we've read other books besides the Conversations books that Neil wrote. But it's a nice adventure. And I was going to tell Stephania that it doesn't matter whether you've read the material, because we usually spend about half the time reading, then we spend half the time discussing. But there's always that open space, which hasn't happened a lot recently, but every now and then something seems so off the wall or confusing that one of us has to say, wait a minute, hold it. I'm not following this. So anyway, we're at the end of the hour. I'm really glad that everybody was able to make it today. And I was going to say that, that darn little yellow bird just flew by and took my thought. Well, I just don't remember what I was going to say, except for everybody have a great rest of your weekend. And
Nanette?
Yes.
I just had one last thought that just popped into my head.
Go for it.
That was related to this conversation. Has anybody ever heard of times when, like, people are in a coma and they'll go back to, let's say there was a car accident and someone is in a coma now and they can't get the person to come out of the coma. There are events where people have gone back to the site of the car wreck and they've found something personal that belonged to the person in the coma. And they take it to the hospital, and then the person will wake up. And my thought about that is that the breath is like, they're not dead, but their spirit, they disembodied. And even though their body's still breathing somewhere, it's like their spirit or their soul detached from their breath. And it's stuck in that place where the event occurred. And by going and getting a piece of that belonged to that person, because the event occurred and there's this piece of the person there that is something that belonged to them, the energy of the spirit doesn't know where to go. And it's stuck with that thing. And when they take that thing to the hospital, then all of a sudden the person will wake up. And I that popped into my head for a story to share. So I thought,
No, that's really a good one. And it reminds me, and again, I can't remember where I read this, but I had a friend, still do, who's been in a coma for 15 years. And,
oh my God.
yeah, and I remember talking to Neil about this, saying, I don't get it. I mean, she's virtually a vegetable. I would go in and read to her, and I did that for over a year. I sat with her when they unplugged her because they thought they were going to let her go, and then she didn't die. So she's not on any kind of stuff. Yeah. And so the thing that was really interesting that I think it was Neil said to me, sometimes some souls think they can do better work from that place. And, because people wonder, why are they still living? And, and they're doing something that which we not know. But I thought it was an interesting possibility.
Yeah. Oh, that's a long time.
I can tell you something very quickly. My father went into a coma in a hospital room, and he was talking to me. We were going through a checklist. It was amazing. We had a better conversation and a longer one than we could have if he'd been lucid. I mean, if he'd been awake. So, and this has continued, for all these years. But in the coma, his eyes were fixed. He was breathing, but like Linda said, he'd gone into the coma in that hospital room. So all the stuff that he had was still there. But as you just said, Nanette, he needed to do the work. And he did it with me. And continues.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Shabana.
Okay, everybody. I love it when we all get to sharing stories here. Yep. Love you. And again,
See you
welcome,
next
Stephania.
week.
Yep. See
Yeah,
everybody
welcome,
next
Shabana.
Sunday. All right.
And I'm
Bye-bye,
gonna
everybody.
email you just now. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye, Shabana.